Here we are, DRG Season 3.
Hi! Hi! Good morning!
I didn't want to push out a video about the experimental until we reached the end, since things could change a lot, and to be honest, some things did, even right between the end of the beta and actual launch. So I'm glad I waited, otherwise I would have basically needed to scrap half this video and start over. That said, there will probably still be some more tweaks after launch, so don't expect this all to remain up to date forever. For now, I'm looking at the changes to old stuff, because that's just how my brain works. Starting with probably the most extensive changes, the changes to the GK2. The GK2 gained 1 base damage, but also lost the 10% weak point bonus. Base ammo is now 360 and base magazine size 30. The Tier 3 +1 damage mod was combined with the Tier 2 +2 damage mod, so now that one gives +3 total. And the ammo mod now gives 120 ammo instead of 100, so both the Tier 2 mods are stronger now. These damage and weak point changes actually change very little about normal GK2 breakpoints. What these damage changes have a bigger impact on is overclocks. More on that later. Next, in Tier 1, half of the rate of fire mod was merged into base, and a minus 0.5 second reload speed mod was added. Aside from adding another option, this means builds that don't take Tier 1 rate of fire will be stronger now, although I probably usually will still be taking it myself. Tier 3 didn't change except for the damage mod getting merged up into the Tier 2 mod, but that means you're free to take either of the Tier 3 mods while still getting +3 damage from mods total. The gun's magazine already got increased by 5 at base, so with the magazine mod you can now reach mag size of 40, which is quite a lot. But the Tier 3 recoil mod doesn't just reduce recoil, it also actually secretly reduces max bloom by quite a bit, so this is not an obvious choice. It reduces the value max spread from 4.2 to 3.55, which doesn't sound like a lot, it looks like about 15%. However, that value governs the maximum amount of bloom, aka spread per shot, by the gun's spread curve. The X value here is spread, which normally can go all the way over here while firing, leading to 3.74 max bloom. When max spread is reduced by just the small amount Tier 3A does, X can only reach over here while firing, leading to 2.09 max bloom. So the end result is minus 44.12% max bloom. It's a pretty big difference in how tight your spread pattern is at the end. And that's not all. The +2 rate of fire mod that was previously in Tier 4 got moved to Tier 5. Also, Battle Cool and Battle Frenzy got combined into one mod, and the stun mod's effect was increased slightly, as well as the base stun chance. That doesn't really matter much though, because +2 rate of fire is usually a lot better than either of these other Tier 5 mods, and having access to it while still being able to take Tier 4 weak point is a big buff to the gun in general. As for overclocks, the biggest winner here is AI Stability Engine. There's a few reasons why. To start, unlike every other GK2 build, it didn't lose weak point bonus in exchange for increased base damage. AI's weak point bonus was increased by 10, so it's still at the exact same amount as before, 50% without the weak point mod and 70% with it, except now it has increased base damage. Reason 2 is that often AI wanted to take the Tier 3 damage up in order to maximize damage and hit the 2-shot grunt breakpoint. But now that it only needs Tier 2 damage to do that, a max damage AI build is free to pick the Tier 3 magazine size mod. And then, last but certainly not least, the rate of fire mod being moved down to Tier 5. With AI's significant rate of fire down, this is a really big deal. It's basically a 28% rate of fire increase, which is enormously useful. Previously, the slow rate of fire on this overclock held it back quite a bit, so this really changes the feel. Here's what this overclock looks like before and after these changes. Bullets of Mercy has gotten some pretty transformative changes. The magazine size now has a 60% multiplier, making it either 18 or 24 compared to before, where it was either 20 or 30. only a little more than half of what GK2's magazine size normally is now, which is pretty harsh. But also, the already good plus 33% damage bonus was kicked up to plus 50%. I understand that the small magazine might turn people off, but the burst damage is very real on this overclock now. It doesn't have the sustain of AI Stability Engine, but it puts out damage significantly faster. And in real missions, usually the big target will also take at least some fire from teammates, so if a target just barely survives one magazine, that's not really a big deal. Also, it works with more debuffs now. Pheromone Grenade debuff, Electric Arcs, Fat Boy Radiation, and Corrosive Puddles, although still not direct corrosion, which is probably a bug. You might be wondering why I'm not taking the stun mod on Bullets of Mercy. There's basically two reasons. Reason one is that there's a billion other ways to inflict status effects for Bullets of Mercy, and if you combo with those, running +2 rate of fire means your DPS against afflicted enemies is higher. Reason two is that, unlike other stun mods, GK2's stun mod doesn't increase stun duration. It's always a very short 1.5 seconds. The most common tanky enemy in the game is Praetorians. Praetorians have 0.8 stun resist, which means they get stunned for only 80% of the normal time, so that already short 1.5 seconds becomes 1.2 seconds. And also, they have a stun cooldown of 2, so when a stun on them wears off, they are immune to stun for 2 seconds. Even under ideal circumstances where a prey isn't turning to face you, maybe because it's targeting someone else, this stun mod isn't very good against them. Here it took 3 shots to stun, then we get 10 damage boosted shots, followed by another 11 unboosted shots during the stun immunity. Only 10 of the 24 shots in the mag dump got boosted damage. And if a Praetorian is trying to face you, this stun is short enough that it's not very good at preventing them from turning. With a bigger stun like this one that lasts 6 seconds, shredding the Praetorian is much more practical. Or you could use something besides a stun, like an IFG that gives an additional 30% damage bonus. And then the second most common, genuinely tanky enemy in the game is Oppressors, and they are outright immune to stun, so you are always strictly better off taking rate of fire against them. Overclocked firing mechanism is not as strong as AI in Bullets of Mercy, but it is also lower effort. This is a comfortable general use build. This is a build for shredding crowds with new Battle Frenzy. And of course, this is a max rate of fire burst damage build. So how do these new strong single target GK2 builds stack up against Scout's previous best single target primary build, Hipster? In terms of DPS, all 4 are pretty damn close. As long as Bullets of Mercy has its damage bonus enabled, it has the most burst DPS of all 4, and also the best ammo efficiency. Overclocked firing mechanism is second best in burst damage, and also has good sustain, but the worst ammo efficiency of all 4. Hipster has the second best burst behind Bullets of Mercy, but it's extremely close, and if your firing rhythm is off just a bit, you'll fall behind. It also has worse sustained DPS than all 3 GK2 builds, both due to doing less damage total before reloading, and also having a longer reload time, even with an animation cancel. Of course, it's on a weapon with super blow-through and a better stun mod, so fair's fair. But I need to emphasize here that all of these options do extremely well in this context. And while both Bullets of Mercy and Hipster can't kill an IFG'd Has-5 4-player Praetorian without reloading, in an actual mission, either of these options would usually rather finish it off with their secondary, a power attack, or with help from a teammate, so that's not really very important. So the GK2 is now very good at mulching tanky targets with the right setups. Considering its other weaknesses, that's pretty much exactly what I wanted, so I can't really complain about any of these changes. There's one other Overclocked cover that does something different though, and that's Electrifying Reload. The damage over time effect that this gives has been buffed significantly, and now does 4.5 damage per tick, 5 times a second, for 6 seconds. With the free extra tick at the start of the dot, that's 139.5 total electric damage from the dot, which is good in general, and more specifically lets you kill grunts with one body shot and a reload. Also, each bullet embedded in the target does 3 damage on reload, so you get a bit more damage from multiple shots at one target, but realistically, usually this is all about the damage over time still. It's not nearly as good at single target as the first few overclocks I mentioned, but in terms of clearing out squishy targets, these changes, combined with the Tier 1 reload speed mod, makes this OC, at this point, very strong at grunt clearing. So that's the GK2. What about everything else? Well, on the M1K, electric focus shots got the exact same buff to its damage over time effect. It doesn't make as big of a difference here, but now, EFS can one-shot slashers with body shots and one-shot guards to the face, with no damage ups at all, not even armor break. Which means it's free to take the faster focus shot mod. And also, the damage over time catches up to the lower focus shot damage faster, so you feel the downside less. Poor Supercooling Chamber has finally gotten massive buffs. Previously, this increased focus shot damage bonus by 125%, taking it from 200% to 325% total, a 62.5% increase. Now that's increased to a plus 150% focus shot bonus, a 75% increase in focus shot damage. And more importantly, Supercooling Chamber focus shots now have their weak point bonus damage tripled. This means that if you take Tier 4B, that 20% weak point bonus becomes a 60% weak point bonus. This not only means Supercooling Chamber does a lot more damage to weak points, but it also cares way more about hitting weak points than before, so it's pushed more into an actual sniper role. Now it's actually possible to kill a Praetorian in 3 focus shots, on Hazard 5 4-player scaling. Though the downsides outside of tanky single targets are still really big. There's also an additional mag size penalty too. So it's still niche, but now actually pretty good within that niche. Gas recycling got another buff, a plus 250% armor break effect. For anyone that doesn't remember, gas recycling not only removes all weak point bonus damage from the weapon, it also nullifies the weak point bonus of the creature you're hitting. So if you shoot a grunt in the face, not only do you lose the plus 15% weak point damage bonus from the weapon, but also your shot doesn't get multiplied by 2 from hitting the grunt's face. This is a really big downside, and not long ago, gas recycling was buffed to have a higher damage bonus, plus 6 instead of plus 5, which is good because before that, it was losing damage even against 1x weak points. Getting an armor break bonus on top of that helps this overclock to perform in a spam into crowds of bugs with blow-through role, where you're frequently hitting armor instead of weak points. It's a comfortable pick alongside AI Stability Engine GK2, so you have a gun that is good at single target damage that cares quite a bit about weak points, and a gun that is good for squishy groups that doesn't care at all about weak points. On the EPC, Flying Nightmare and Plasma Burn have been combined into one mod, Burning Nightmare. With this, not only do your normal shots ignite stuff like Plasma Burn did, but you have the Flying Nightmare effect, except now it also lights stuff on fire. This is really good for Flying Nightmare because you no longer need to stack a lot of charge shot damage to be able to kill grunts with it. They just die due to being set on fire. Also, it means that Flying Nightmare can ignite goo again. Except, wait a minute. When my Burning Nightmare damage is at 60, I actually do 63 damage. When the damage is at 90, I actually do 94.5 damage. As it turns out, Burning Nightmare is bugged in a similar way to how Inferno gets bigger damage than intended, and Incendiary Hyperprop doesn't lose damage. Those are due to a problem with how the game handles damage conversion, and this mod also converts damage types, changing most of the damage to fire. In this case, the bug leads to Burning Nightmare doing 5% more damage than it's supposed to. Not likely to be very important, but who's going to complain about 5% extra damage? The empty tier 5 slot was filled with Plasma Splash, which makes some of the normal shot damage into area damage and is terrible. Don't equip this. The Sabata's Mactera Toxin upgrade got replaced with Acid-Tipped Bullets, which just adds 2 direct corrosive damage to your shots. This is normally a 16.6% damage increase that works against everything, instead of a 20% increase against just Mactera. And because most Mactera have a 100% vulnerability to corrosive damage, against them this is usually about a 32.2% increase, so it's stronger in that context too. The Wave Cooker's convex lens upgrade actually works now, and high explosive grenades can be cooked by holding the button, letting you release them shortly before they explode. Or just blow yourself up if you want. Finally, a few changes to enemies. Ice Praetorian Breath is fixed and actually inflicts freeze now. Brood Nexus is changed somewhat. Their eyes now have 300 base HP instead of 200 and have large creature scaling, so their HP will go up more with hazard and player count. However, the damage done to the Nexus when an eye is destroyed has been doubled, from 300 to 600 damage. Patrol bots have been nerfed in both move speed and damage, and more significantly to freeze enjoyers, you can actually freeze them now. Like shellbacks, freezing them won't stop them from moving, but you do still get to do triple damage when hitting their body, so you can one-shot them with axes now. And their weak points remain active, so hitting them in the head when they're frozen does huge damage. Also, they were made more difficult to ignite, with their temperature change scale value. The old patrol bot temperature change scale was 0.6. Now it's 0.4. Nemesis did not have its temperature change scale touched at all, so he's still the same. And I think that's all the changes to old stuff. Pretty great changes, not much more to say.